Hey everybody, welcome to Dynamite After Dark. I'm your host, Zanman Shane Sabunia, the expatriate, along with my good buddy, the Honorable Jeff.
Hello.
And welcome to Dynamite After Dark. Let's start at the top, Jeff, because you were just telling me how much you loved this main event, and I enjoyed a lot of it, but I was getting fucking sick of Jake Hager coming in there every so often to interrupt the flow of the match. And then at the end of it, the rest of the inner circle, the PNP had to come out there too, so nope, we couldn't actually get a fair contest, for the main event there. It had to be a 5-on-2 beatdown. Boy, that was just fucking riveting television.
I think that might have been my only negative on it. I'm not saying this was a 5-star epic classic that I'll watch over and over again, but for a TV match at the end of a live broadcast, it was very entertaining. I enjoyed the golf cart spot a lot, especially watching Sammy run away from it. I enjoyed a lot of the backstage stuff. I enjoyed, some of the moves like Kenny and Matt pulling out the Whisper in the Wind and all that. So it had enough high points to where I was happy with it.
It had its moments, and it was, like you said, high energy and exciting. But I'm just to the point where and I realize we haven't seen the inner circle be together in months, but I do have a memory. And I'm just getting really sick of the babyfaces always being too stupid to have the numbers that the heels do.
It's classic wrestling writing, though.
Yeah, maybe, but I saw way too much happening in MLW, and now I'm seeing it happen way too much in AEW. At some point the babyfaces need to wise up and realize that they can't always give the heels a number advantage. And I realize also that. Not all the members of the Elite were even there, but Cody was. And, other guys that Jericho and their had problems with, like Billy Gunn and his stupid son and Pineapple Pete were all there. So it wasn't like there weren't baby faces there. SCU was even there that could have been out there helping the out. So, it takes away a lot of my suspension of disbelief when it happens over and over and over again.
If Cody couldn't even come out and save his own wife, do you really think he's going to make an effort for people he's not even really a member of a faction with anymore?
But he only had about 2 minutes together with his wife, whereas he had about half an hour, or at least 10 minutes to get out there with the Elite to help them out.
Yeah, but still, if he wasn't gonna run out and save his wife, I didn't expect it. I see where
he should have been with them from the start. If this is supposed to be the faction that eventually is supposed to finally have that blood and guts match, he should have been out there with him to start it.
I understand where you're coming from, but it's become such classic wrestling writing that I guess I didn't.
Classic is another word for saying old hat. Like it's de rigueur, it's boring, and if it's just this one night again to establish their dominance, I'm fine with it, I guess. But if this keeps happening week after week after week again, like it started to happen at the beginning of March, then I'm going to have a real problem with it because it's just too boring.
Well, it's writing towards a comeuppance storyline at a pay-per-view, which we would have gotten at Blood and Guts. Now, the fact that we didn't get it at Blood and Guts, and we've had 2 months of them not having that presence anymore.
And in those 2 or 3 months, the babyfaces had to become brain dead and forget this could happen, right?
Well, they've got to rewrite now for another payoff. It's not.
Jeff. Again,
it's not.
Do the babyfaces become brain dead and forget something like this can happen?
Were they ever brain dead? This has been the same storyline that's been going on since 1984 with the Heenan family. This is just wrestling writing. The heels are always going to get the number advantage until they get their comeuppance at the pay-per-view. That's just
an excuse, though. That's an excuse for saying this is just wrestling writing. It's 2020 now. They could easily change the wrestling writing to something that makes more sense. They could at least write people off the screen so it doesn't make it look so fucking ridiculous.
They could, but this has been the way it's been since the dawn of time. The Horsemen did it, the Heenan family did it, the NWO perfected.
Those are just excuses. What did I just fucking get done saying?
They're not excuses. This is classic wrestling writing.
You're talking about 35 goddamn years ago.
I'm agreeing with you, and I've agreed with you in the past that this kind of writing isn't the way it is, but it's nothing to get this angry about.
Yeah, because I expect more from this promotion.
It's the way that writing is in wrestling. It's, as much as we want the heel versus face thing to go away, it's never going to.
And if because they were going to do this, they could have at least had those 3 guys all come out at the end and not have to have Jake Hager involved in 2/3 of the match.
I'm not going to disagree with you, but I'm not also going to get... Don't
tell me it was a great match. You were really enjoying it.
Wow, you are fired up today.
I'm pissed. It was a good episode. They advertised one thing, and they delivered something totally different.
Well, they advertised a street fight, which is what we got.
Between 2 teams, not between 3-on-2 or 5-on-2.
This is great. You're really fired up.
And have all those baby faces out there watching and just not doing anything to help them when the other part that we're not supposed to remember because they're doing WWF style booking now or WWE style booking where they don't want the fans to remember shit is that remember the Inner Circle declared war on the entire promotion. So
right.
Why were the baby faces out there helping them when that's the case?
Because 90% of those baby faces aren't even on the roster.
Doesn't matter. They're still there.
But they're not. They're not a part of the roster.
Paycheck. They should be doing something.
Oh, you are fired up.
Don't fuck up my show, man.
I love when you get this angry about something.
Well, I think that when you have, you could have, Sean Spears get involved when he was, against the babyfaces. You could have Britt Baker Chelsea Baker get involved against the babyfaces, but you can't have the babyfaces help the heels when they're clearly stealing advantages. It makes no goddamn sense.
I think because it's not a, the last time something like that really happened where babyfaces got involved when they weren't involved was when the NWO was trying to take over WCW. There's not
just
that.
Just like the Inner Circle said they were going to take over AEW right after the Revolution pay-per-view, like that.
But they're not. It's not that same. It's not a same storyline. This is more like when Legacy.
It's fucking COVID-19 that's kept them out of the arena ever since then.
This is more like when Evolution said the same thing.
They were taking over everything.
This is more like when Evolution said the same thing. They're just not. It's not. People don't get involved when it doesn't affect them, and it's not like their jobs are being threatened like it was with storyline NWO writing. I mean, the NWO was going to fire everybody because Eric Bischoff was in charge if they didn't join the NWO. So, yeah, people were fighting back because they were fighting for their jobs. If the NWO took over, then they lost their jobs. That's not the same thing here. So you get people like, and if we're being real, if I saw how many Americans, if they saw 2 guys getting beat down by 4, would actually jump in to help if it didn't affect them at all?
But if they're supposed to be babyface heroes, they should be doing it.
If they're supposed to be babyface heroes, but Pineapple Pete's an indie guy who's just on the show and got his name called out a few times.
But how many times did Chris Jericho over the last 4 weeks say how much he hated Billy Gunn and his son and how they were stupid good guys and all this other shit, and then they didn't even jump.
Were those 2 even there?
They were.
They
were in the back area where they were fighting, and they were like laughing and joking and cheering on and cheering what was going on.
You know what? I can't answer that, but I'm not. I guess I'm not gonna fret about it as much because it's just the way wrestling is.
Oh God, that's how you use that excuse now.
I mean, let's be honest. Outside of having longer matches and putting an emphasis on tag team wrestling, which has been done in other companies for a long time, Ring of Honor, for example. In all honesty, what has AEW really, really done to revolutionize pro wrestling? Nothing. They've got the same tired storylines that have been going on in wrestling for 30-some years. Jesus Christ, their number 1 contender can't even wrestle for the title, and they don't explain it away. It's the same it's the same wrestling that we see all the time, except we're actually getting good matches as opposed to superstar versus superstar, and every single week seeing the same formula every single week with the same participants that we're going to see for 3 straight pay-per-views. I mean, outside of that, it's not like they've gone out and reinvented the wheel. They've run with the same stuff that's worked for 30 plus years and revamped it a little
I do
bit.
not like when people push the reset button. That's what they did tonight with the Inner Circle shit. Because it's the exact same bullshit that we saw after Revolution, and they just decided that, oh, since we couldn't have these guys here for a couple of months, let's just redo it all over again.
We never got the payoff. We never got the payoff.
You know how much I hate that shit.
Oh, I get it, but we never got the payoff. It's not like we had that ultimate blood and guts.
That doesn't mean you have to insult the fans' intelligence, though.
It's not really insulting the fans' intelligence.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not, because we never.
Intelligence, or you're insulting the Babyface's intelligence. Either way, you're insulting somebody's intelligence.
So just because COVID-19 happened and they couldn't have their big payoff, we're just supposed to think that the Inner Circle now is no longer a force?
No, but you could at least have their opponents be smart enough to know what's going to happen and take safeguards to prevent it. So at least
Babyfaces are never smart enough.
At least we have 5-on-5 and not 5-on-2, or maybe the Inner Circle introduces another member to make it 6-on-5, and that's something the Babyfaces weren't expecting, something like that.
The problem is it wasn't a war of Babyfaces versus the Inner Circle. It wasn't a war of all heels versus all faces. This is a war of the Elite versus the Inner Circle. And while I agree with you that Cody should have gotten off his ass at least once, either when his wife was getting beaten down or when his teammates were, I can't fault the rest of the roster for not jumping in, because it wasn't a war of the Inner Circle versus the entire roster. Even though they did declare they were going to run roughshod over the roster, they never did. Outside of Moxley, it was the Elite that they attacked. They never randomly ran out and attacked Pineapple Pete or any of the other baby faces. Yeah, Jericho ran them down on commentary, and Pineapple Pete stepped up or what is his actual name? I mean, I know it's not Pineapple Pete, but even the announcers are calling him that now.
When Tony Schiavone, I know it originally wasn't Pineapple Pete and it was something else, but Tony Schiavone actually announced that next week on Dynamite is Chris Jericho versus Pineapple Pete. So maybe that's what for his name now.
And he called him Pineapple Pete 3 or 4 times, especially in the beginning.
Right.
It's like, this guy has an actual wrestling name. We're not just going to start calling him Jericho's nickname. But regardless, I mean, he did step up to Jericho as for all the insults, but outside of him, nobody else really. It was just insults. It's not like there's a personal vendetta between every babyface on the roster in the Inner Circle. They declared war, but they haven't beaten anybody down. They've kept their battle to the Inner Circle. Or I'm sorry, to the Elite. They haven't really included everybody else. So I mean, it doesn't destroy me that that every babyface on the roster didn't run to Kenny Omega's aid.
Well, it would have bugged me a lot less if Cody had come out there, or somebody else,
if Cody had
out there, or at least somebody had been out there with him, because they knew Hager was going to be out there, and if if the PMP had come in at the end and helped out for the victory, it just bugged the hell out of me that Hager was so involved in that match.
And I agree with that. I think Hager being as involved and Cody not doing anything kind of leads more credence to the what we said last week about how Cody is one of the bigger heels on the roster, but he's being cheered because he's the face of AEW. This just proves kind of what we were saying, is Cody is in it for himself. He's not in this for his teammates and for everything. He's probably one of the biggest heels on the roster, but he's getting cheered every single week.
The other thing I'll say about that match is that after everything Hager took and kept getting up from it, they hit the wrong guy with the side-by-side.
Right, yeah, exactly. I will say this, though, that watching Sammy run down the corridor or run down the rampway, whatever it was, the backstage area being chased by the cart was one of the best things I've seen.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right. The action in the match was outstanding. It was just, to me, it was just way too much outside interference.
And I'll agree with you. I'll agree with you on that, and I'll agree with you on the Cody part. Unfortunately, I'm not going to agree with you on that every face on the roster should have attacked, but I will definitely agree with you 100% that Cody not lifting a finger, not only for his own wife, but also for his teammates while they're getting beaten down, is just proves that Cody is a heel.
Speaking of Cody's wife, this is the second time that she's had the opportunity to have one of these, admittedly pre-taped statements that she's done, but both times she's knocked it out of the park with them. I think she's very good in that type of setting.
And see that too. I mean, that's another part that lays credence to the whole Cody Rhodes thing, is that he knew she cut this promo. He knew that she was going to be targeted by Roberts and by Archer. The fact that he didn't at least accompany them to ringside or be on the ready to come out there it's a horrible heel act that is going to go unnoticed because he's the face of the company.
Yeah, I loved how she called him a good guy in her little promo.
Right,
thing.
Exactly.
And that's the only part of that. And I was like, what? The rest of it was great. The rest of it had me riveted. But I was like, no, he's not.
Speaking of unbelievably fire promos, fucking Brodie Lee. I didn't realize he really had that in him, because we never heard him talk in NXT or in WWE. He was always overshadowed by Bray. Mm-hmm. But that man can deliver a promo.
Yeah, I tried to tell you that before.
And he was nails with it. I mean, everything that he said, the way he said it, very Jake Robert-esque, with the talking at a whisper and everybody will hear what I say type of stuff. I thought his promo was amazing. One of the best I've heard in a long time.
Let's just be totally clear about it. That entire segment from the time those two made their entrances to the time that Brodie Lee left with the World Championship was tits. I love that entire thing.
Yep, that match, Frankie Kazarian. Now, one thing that maybe I misheard him. Were they saying that he has 16 victories or he's 16-0?
Who's that?
Frankie Kazarian.
I think they said he has 16 victories. He can't be 16-0.
Or was it 13 victories? Well, that's what I was going to say. Is I kept hearing them saying 13, and I thought it was 13, not 16. And I kept hearing them talk about he's got 13 wins, 13 wins, 13 wins, and I'm like, okay, first of all, he has not wrestled a singles match, so all those wins are with his tag team partner. And secondly, he's not 13-0. I know for a fact he lost at least one match when they lost the belts.
Yeah, and they lost 3 matches too.
Unless they were counting pinfalls, where he's never, because I don't believe he's ever taken the pinfall. I think it's always been Sky.
Really?
I believe so, yeah. I mean, I'd have to go back and look, but I'm fairly certain, if I think about it, Kazarian's always knocked out on the apron or something, and Sky ate the pins.
I'm not sure.
So, I mean, unless
they were pushing Sky so hard, I thought he was the one that was getting all the pins and not taking none of the losses. Well,
they also said 13 wins, which would also make sense. Where maybe, because I can guarantee SCU has had way more than 13 matches in AEW since last October.
And you made a pretty bold statement that he hasn't had any singles matches. There's not been any on Dynamite, but that doesn't mean there hasn't been any on Dark that we have just haven't.
Oh no, they actually said it that this was his first singles match since 2019.
Oh, did they? Okay.
Yeah. So, he may have had 1 or 2 singles matches on Dark in 2019, but I believe it was JR actually did say it, that this was his first singles match of 2020. But I'm wondering if maybe they're counting only his pinfalls where he actually got the pinfall, because I know they've had way more than 13 matches. And if they're they've been successful more than not, especially, Jesus, they probably had 13 wins in that tournament and while they were champions. So I wonder if they're just counting.
I think 13 is probably right.
You think so?
Fine. I do because I mean there were times when they were champions they weren't there in some weeks, and there were, because you got to think about it. This is only they've only been around as an organization for about 7 months now. So then there were a couple of weeks there. They were probably on like every other week when they were the champions, if not every week sometimes. But there was also, once they lost the titles, we've barely seen them.
Well, we saw them every week because remember before this whole shutdown thing, we were actually complaining about how every single week it's Best Friends and SCU. They're on every single week, and other tag teams aren't getting any time on TV because it's always a match with either Best Friends or SCU.
See, in my recollection, they didn't even show up on TV for like 3 out of the 4 weeks after they'd lost the titles, and then we had this COVID thing going on. So I would say, for the better part of the last 3 months, we haven't seen SCU.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we haven't seen them at least the last 4 or 5 episodes that were taped, because that was Best Friends every single week. They were in the tag team match every week.
Yeah, I don't think 13 wins is out of the question for being an accurate for them as a team. I really don't.
That's possible, but I just think it's kind of tainted to say that they've got 13 wins when most of that was in a tag team, when all of that was in a tag team, and most of it was during Scorpio Sky's push, so they couldn't really say that Frankie was the catalyst of the wins when Scorpio Sky was getting all the pinfalls.
Yeah, I think a system like that should be something like maybe you get 3 wins for a singles win, 2 points for a tag win, and then like 1 point for a draw.
Oh, so you're actually saying there should be a reasoning for their ranking system other than just, hey, Cody should be the number 1 contender now? Arlo.
Well,
Arlo.
I like the idea of there being a reason behind their ranking system, but I know they also take into account like who you actually beat and who you lost to as well. So I really don't know how to factor that all in. I'm not a mathematician.
It means nothing to me when they have mini tournaments to crown number 1 contenders, and number 4 will jump up to number 1 that easily. And whenever Cody Rhodes is mentioned, when a guy who can't even challenge for a championship is mentioned as the number 1 contender, the ranking system means nothing to me.
Well, they technically don't see it. I mean, I agree with you, but they technically don't say it's the number 1 contender. They just say he's ranked number 1 in the company.
No, they said he was number 1 contender tonight.
Did they?
That's why it stuck out so much to me, is they legitimately said he's the number 1 contender for the heavyweight title.
No, he's not, because he can't contend for the heavyweight title.
And then during his match, they were backtracking, saying, "We know, he's the number one guy, but he can't technically wrestle because of his loss to Jericho." And it's like, then he can't even be in the rankings. Plain and simple. If he can't wrestle for the belt, he should not be in the rankings.
Yeah, well, that's been our argument for months now, but I mean, it's not going to change, so there's no point in bringing it up over and over again.
I know, it still just angers me.
Okay. One thing that angered me was
everything. Everything is fired up as you are.
I really liked everything going on with MJF, and I liked how he was announced as having a match with Jungle, and I love the spit take he did about it. And then JR had to ruin it by saying he's against Jungle Boy Jack Perry. It's like, fuck you, JR. I was very happy the last several weeks not having to hear Jack Perry's name. He goes by Jungle Boy. Call him fucking Jungle Boy. You're the only motherfucker that does that. Knock it the fuck off.
It's funny because I was watching Twitter, and there was while I was watching tonight, I was working on uploading some of our.
Twitter.
Yeah, while I was watching the show, I was actually on Twitter watching the feed go by, and there were so many people that were complimenting JR and his commentary tonight about how much they missed him because he's been off TV forever, and how they thought he was on point. And I'm like, yeah, he was. It was nice to hear him again, nice to hear the whole team again, but I mean, JR is still JR. He's a legend who deserves all the kudos in the world for his work from 97 to about 2004, but he's not the same JR that we had back then.
No, and he did do a solid job tonight, but that That's something that's always going to piss me off, I guess. And I know it's something I should get over, but it's just the fact is that he's doing something that nobody else does. Jungle Boy doesn't call himself Jungle Boy Jack Perry. None of his opponents do. None of his partners do. None of the other announcers do. He's the only guy that does it. And I think he would just get the company line and call him by the the name that he goes by. And I mean, even anytime he calls him Jack Perry in the match, Excalibur is quick to just say Jungle Boy after.
Right. Yeah, I have noticed that. I have noticed that a lot. And I think a lot of it's because Jungle Boy is trying to make a name for himself, not based on his dad. Mm-hmm. And every time JR does that, the first thing that comes up is Luke Perry. That's the first thing you think of. So now all of a sudden he's tied to his famous dad.
Yep, exactly. It's like just like Joe Hill. Just like the author Joe Hill was trying not to be synonymous with his famous dad. And he wanted to make it on his own.
Yeah, and you can't blame a kid for that.
Not at all. And I do understand JR's point that he wants him to have a chance in the future if he chooses to go by something else, but that's his choice.
Right.
It's not your decision to put it out on Front Street.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see Jungle Boy on a marquee. So at some point, he's probably going to end up changing his name and maybe going by Jack Perry. Who knows?
But to be fair, did you ever see the?
So go to the fridge and get it, Arlo.
Did you ever see the Young Bucks on the marquee? I mean, they're not young. They're not going to be young.
No, exactly.
They're not going to be young for another 10 years. So there's always going to go by the Young Bucks.
But going by a tag team's a little bit different than going by a goofy name in today's wrestling. It's not like it was 30 years ago when you could go by the Shockmaster.
You couldn't even go by the Shockmaster 30 years ago.
They tried. They definitely tried. But even like Vader, I mean, Big Van Vader is not a name that would work in today's world. Hold on, Arlo. Hold on. That's not even a name that I think would work in today's environment.
So who is your all-time play-by-play guy of all time?
It's tough because play-by-play has never been my favorite. I think if I had to pick somebody, it would have to be the guy that I kind of grew up watching, and that's Tony Schiavone.
For me, it's always been Vince McMahon. I've always loved Vince McMahon's commentary on like Saturday Night's Main Event and Superstars, even some of the WrestleManias, Raw. He's always been my favorite play-by-play.
Gorilla Monsoon is another one that would have to be like right up there. Like I think Schiavone, because as much of a wrestling fan as I was in the 80s, Gorilla Monsoon, I was never a diehard. I mean, I was a kid. So, and I really liked the NWA announcers too. When Schiavone was, a table guy back then, he wasn't an actual announcer, but Schiavone's probably been in my life the longest. So I might have a little more love for him than I normally would. But Gorilla Monsoon is up there as well.
I think Gorilla was good playing off of both Jesse and Bobby, but I think just from the excitement level, the personality that he had, the everyman quality, despite the fact he's certainly not that anymore. That man had, I always enjoyed the hell out of. And my second favorite is probably Schiavone, and then rapidly over the last few years gaining traction on both of them for me is Kevin Kelly.
Well, and Ian Riccaboni is still one of the tops. I even now, when I'm not totally in love with the Ring of Honor program, I still enjoy listening to Riccaboni. I will say this, that tonight, when Excalibur called a V-trigger a knee to the back of the neck, I really, really missed Kevin Kelly screaming V-trigger.
Yeah, that bugged me too. But on the other hand, you shouldn't be able to get it that quickly from a V-trigger, so I'm happy with it just being a high knee. And that's
Yeah. I mean, and we didn't see, that was one thing that I did notice about this match is we didn't see a whole lot of Kenny's moves. outside of his, and I don't know what he calls it, it's the more bang for the buck that he used to do with the Golden Lovers, and it was called the Golden Buck or something like that. I don't remember, but
more bang for your golden buck.
Is that what it was? Okay, but he did his solo version of that, but I didn't see any dragon suplexes. I didn't see any V triggers. I didn't see any, of his standard moves that we normally see out of Kenny Omega.
No, he did the V trigger, and he did the that like high flying bulldog leapfrog combination. I can't remember the name of that off the top of my head.
Oh,
and then he tried for the one winged angel on Jericho at the end when the PMP came out to stop.
It was weird because I'm used to seeing that Snapdragon at least three times per match, and I'm used to seeing V triggers. It's one of the things that I've always given him so much credit for is that he can do a V trigger 8 times in a match, every single match, and it never seems forced. Where you see other guys, they've got their 5 or 6 moves that they have to get into every match, and they always seem forced. Mm-hmm. His V triggers have never seemed forced, ever.
And I really loved that's one thing I did really love about JR's commentary tonight was talking about Kenny, about how people are like, where's Kenny? Where's Kenny? Where's the Kenny we saw in New Japan? Well, Kenny's right here, and he's doing it just fine.
Yeah, Kenny's just not out there at Wrestle Kingdom putting on 75-minute matches.
Right.
But this is the same Kenny, and I especially talk him up every single week.
Let's be honest, if he was wrestling weekly television for NJPW, he wouldn't have been putting on 75-minute matches either.
No, exactly. And, we're the first ones to talk about, I talk about him almost every other week about what a treat it is to see a guy as talented as him every single week. Right. And I'm not going to back off of that. I don't think Kenny ever went anywhere. That's why I was so annoyed by his storyline of being lost and having to find himself and all that stuff. Just like I was with the Adam Page storyline, where the whole reason he quit the Elite was because he was lost and needed to go out on his own. And he wasn't getting cheered and all this stuff. And it's like, dude, you're the most popular guy on the roster. What do you mean you're not getting cheered?
Yeah, very true.
So, I mean, I'm really happy that he did say that. That was one thing that really stuck out about his announcing tonight is when he was like, where's Kenny Omega been? Guys, he's right here. This is Kenny Omega. And he's true. It's true. He's the same guy now that he has been for the last 4 years when he was probably the best in the world.
Yeah, he's just doing different things,
One thing I will say,
you can't be on top forever.
One thing I will say is that Cody's matches are starting to get a little bit predictable.
Starting to?
No, I mean, but more so than he's gotten past his 5-move kind of stretch thing where he's got his 5 signature moves he has to get in. But now even the storyline of each match is so similar every single time he wrestles.
I know. I've noticed that since All Out.
Yeah, you pay more attention to that stuff than I do, though.
I suppose.
I mean, just with me being, kind of looking at it as more because I've enjoyed Cody's matches. I've enjoyed watching him. I've enjoyed watching the way he is in the ring and the stuff that he does. But ultimately, he's not been some guy that I've... Can you turn that down, Arlo? Jesus. He's not one of those guys that I analyze every single thing he does because as much as I do like the work he's done, I've never looked at him as an elite level competitor like a Kenny Omega. Where Kenny, I analyze everything he does in the ring because he's so good at it.
Yeah, I think for me it was that amazing match he had against Dustin last year, and then that match he had against Shawn Spears at All Out were both outstanding matches, and it was starting to be the point where I was calling him the best storyteller in pro wrestling, and
oh yeah, I was right there with you.
And since then it's just kind of fallen to the point where, like you said, he's telling the same story in all his matches.
I mean, they all end up, even his match.
At least he didn't use 2 or 3 crossbows to beat Joey Janela. It was just one of them.
Well, and he didn't hit the disaster kick 14 times. calling it a different name every single time. Speaking of which, when I was watching, or when Twitter was up, I was sitting here and I'm just watching this Moxley match, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw MJF had tweeted, and all it said is, "Jon Moxley smells like shit." Fucking MJF. I like MJF tweeting during the show. I think that's fun.
Yeah, you should.
But yeah, it was a tweet from MJF, and all it said is, "Jon Moxley smells like shit," and it was right after Moxley walked past him.
Isn't it nice that he named his fan base after you, though?
What's that?
Isn't it nice that he named his fan base after you?
I've been going through meltdown after meltdown tonight, as you can probably tell by the child still being awake.
Oh yeah, they're called the MJeffers.
MJeffers? Yeah, I unfortunately didn't hear that. I thought he was delivering.
That was 2 weeks ago. He said.
Was it? Oh, well, then I probably forgot about it. I don't know. I mean, his promo tonight, what I caught of it was really, really good. The one where he was sitting on the throne.
Yeah.
And then his one with Shivani too, I thought was really good. The little bits and pieces I caught. After somebody goes to bed, I'm going to actually rewatch them.
I mean, that'd be a bad idea.
Because I thought they were going really well, but then, we needed milk or we needed something, so I didn't get to catch all of it.
Yeah, well, before you know it, he'll be old enough to get that stuff for himself.
Yeah, and I believe me, I'm cherishing it. I'm not complaining about it at all. But it's one of those things where sometimes I have to rewatch things because I miss it.
Yeah, I get it. Nice to see Nyla Rose back tonight, but I really wish they'd had something more meaningful for her to do.
She cut a pretty decent promo too, one that I was fairly impressed with.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. Anything else?
No, I don't have anything.
Yeah, me neither.
Guys, if you're listening to us on YouTube, first of all, we appreciate it. Thank you very much. Secondly, hit that like button, subscribe button, ring the notification bell. It helps us out a lot. Also, check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/Kingdom of Honor. You can subscribe to our archives, hear everything we have ever done as a duo going all the way back to 2015. And also, we do have some exclusives.
5 years we've been together, guys. Can you believe that shit?
And 5 years is actually coming up. Like, wasn't it WrestleMania? So it's just over 5 years.
Yeah.
But I mean, one of our first shows was shortly after WrestleMania in 2015. So we've been doing this now for 5 years. Which is great, and you can listen to all of it on our Patreon.com. Patreon.com/Kingdom of Honor. Also, we did do a brand new Patreon exclusive show last week. So, and another one coming up this coming week. Also, look us up on Twitter. You can. I'm at Regi Co-op. He's at Zanman LOP, and use the hashtag DAD and the hashtag KOH for everything. Also, if you are on YouTube, you can check us out on Lords of Pain Radio YouTube channel for Dynamite After Dark. It runs on both our channel and that channel. So,
and like Jeff mentioned, we'll be doing a Patreon show next week. We'll be talking about Final Battle 2011, the last of the first year of our coverage of Sinclair of Honor for Ring of Honor. So check that out if you get a chance, and then listen to us talk about it. Tomorrow night is MCLOP Radio Adventure. On Friday is WWF The Legacy Series, talking about Survivor Series 1987, the very first Survivor Series. And then next Tuesday, we'll be back with you talking about Bound for Glory 2005. As you guys know, there's still not a lot of wrestling stuff going on right now. NJPW is all canceled for the foreseeable future. Ring of Honor's canceled all those shows now through June. So, so I mean, it's going to be July until we have really another organization to talk about besides Impact, and I guess MLW if something strikes our fancy there. So we're going to dive back to a time when we loved TNA in Bound for Glory 2005 and talk about not only that card but also, if they had stayed the course of Rhino as world champion, what could have happened, instead of going back to Jeff Jarrett 2 days later. So that's all we've got. We'll try to do better next time. This is Shane saying long days, pleasant nights, and Jeff saying
goodbye.
G1 Climax 27. Goodbye and good night. Bang.